bakers and bakerettes. How are you today? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to my space, my kitchen. For those of you who just stopping by, my name is Cassie, and I am the mastermind behind all the epic recipes on Cassie's Kitchen Creations. And welcome. Thanks for joining us. Alright guys, today I am going to bake something somewhat nostalgic. Okay, not quite vintage, but I'll say it nostalgic. This is a recipe that both my maternal and paternal grandmothers, and also my paternal great grandmother, would bake. This is what I grew up on as the red velvet cake. Until years later, people perfected this recipe. And as you guys know, I baked the red velvet, purple velvet, and also blue velvet. I do white velvet, yellow velvet, pink velvets. I have several marble velvets. I'll share with you as time goes, because usually those are for special occasions or events. So when I get to that point, I'll share them. But all of those cakes developed from the red velvet. The red velvet came from what's known as a mahogany cake. So the mahogany cake walked so the red velvet could run. A lot of people don't bake the mahogany cake anymore. They just simply go and add about 2 to 3 tablespoons of cocoa unsweetened, and they'll add the red food coloring because they want that intense red color. However, the original velvet cake, which is known as the mahogany cake, is like a reddish brown color because you're only adding the cocoa to it, right? So with that being said, I'm going to bake the originator, the mahogany cake. And I'm not going to add any coloring or anything because the acidity of the buttermilk and the acidity of the unsweetened Dutch cocoa that I'm using, they're going to react and they're going to give us that reddish brown color that gives it that mahogany color, as they call it, which is the name mahogany cake. All right. So I have already pre-measured my dry ingredients, and I've sifted them, and I whisked them as well. I whisked first and then I sifted because I want the cocoa to be well incorporated. I don't want to see like little flakes of cocoa, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a half a cup of butter at room temperature to my blender, and I'm going to blend it until it's creamy. It usually takes about 2 to 3 minutes on the butter. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this started. I have a little bit of butter left here. We want all of the butter. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and cream the butter. It's going to take about 2 to 3 minutes for this butter to cream. I'm going to place you on a brief pause while it creams, and then when I'm ready to add my sugar, I'll bring you back. The butter is creamed. So the next thing I'm going to do is add the sugar. And this is white granulated sugar. And to this recipe, it requires 1 1/3 cups of white granulated sugar. I've already pre-measured my sugar. And I'm going to add it to the butter. And now I'm going to cream the butter and the sugar. Again, this takes about roughly, because I'm only using a half a cup of butter to 1 1/3 cup of sugar. So this should take about 2 to 3 minutes on medium speed. So I'll place you on a brief pause while this creams, and I'll pick you back up when it's time to add the next ingredient. Okay guys, as with any recipe that you follow along, you know that we always cream our butter and sugar until it's creamy, fluffy, kind of like ice cream. That's my concept. You want it to be smooth and creamy. All right, the next additive that we're going to add is going to be our oil. Any neutral oil will work. Canola oil, vegetable oil, olive oil, grapeseed oil, any neutral oil. But remember, with the olive oils, as you get those extra and extra virgin oils, they're going to leave a taste. So be mindful of that. That will add a slight taste to it. I'm going to use 1/4 cup of just simple vegetable oil. All right, I'm going to add it to my blender. I'm also going to scrape down the sides, and I've added the oil first so that when I fold it, I fold the cream, sugar, and butter on top. I'm going to get a pretty good mix here. I'm just going to get everything well mixed, and then I'll just knock what's on my beater off back into the bowl as well. Okay. So we're going to put this on a stir mode, which is just simply stir. It's just introducing our cream, butter, and sugar to the oil, or the oil to the cream, butter, and sugar. Now I'm going to increase the speed. And I'm going to allow this to cream as well. I just want everything to be smooth and like fluffy. So now I'm going to decrease my speed to just a stir. And now I'm going to add my eggs, and I'm going to add them one at a time. I'll crack it into my stainless steel bowl here, just to make sure that they're okay. And with the eggs, as I've always told you, you just want to make sure that you break the yolk, and that you no longer see the yellow of the yolk like streaking through your batter. You just want it to become incorporated and become one. That's the first egg. Now I will add the second egg. Same concept. Just break the yolk. Now I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of Watkins baking vanilla. Increase my speed slightly. Now I'm going to scrape down the sides of my mixing bowl because I don't want to see any of the yellow streak from the egg, and I also do not want to see the butter and sugar and oil not blended in. Okay? And make sure you fold from the bottom after you scrape the sides down. Make sure you fold from the bottom to the top, because with this one sometimes the egg yolk will also sit on the bottom, and also the oil will also sometimes not be well mixed, and it'll rest on the bottom as well. So you want to make sure you fold it and mix it really good by hand with your spatula. Just scraping from the bottom to the top, folding it over, just make a circle. And these are key steps. They're very important when baking a cake if you want to get the perfection. And practice makes perfect. You know, each time you do it, well, I won't say perfect, I'll say excellent, because nothing is perfect. But you'll get better and better each time. Okay. And now we will mix this again. Now I want this to go for about 3 minutes because I want it to be well combined. However, I don't want it to get to the point to where it's overbeat and then you start seeing separation. So I'm going to let this go for like 2 minutes, and then I will pick you back up when the 2 minutes are up. Okay, let it go for like 2 minutes and it's well mixed. So now I'm going to get to my last step, which is going to be adding the flour and also the whole buttermilk. And the flour is 2 cups, and I use all-purpose flour. If you would like to use cake flour, you may do so. It's 2 cups of white lily all-purpose flour. To this, I added 3 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa, and also I added 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, the cocoa, the baking soda, and the flour, I sifted. I whisked it first to get it all incorporated together. Then I sifted it because I want to see the fineness. I don't want to see little balls of the chocolate floating around in there. I want it to all be one uniform dry ingredient mix. All right. So then I have my buttermilk, and the buttermilk, the eggs, and the butter all have to be at room temperature, of course. And the buttermilk is 1 1/4 cup of whole buttermilk. All right. And don't substitute buttermilk for like regular whole milk or any of the other milks. For this cake, it has to be buttermilk because buttermilk is acidic. The cocoa is acidic. These two, and I told you, cooking, baking is chemistry. The science behind it, being that they're both acidic, is what gives it that mahogany color, that reddish brown color that it has once it bakes. All right, so it has to be buttermilk and unsweetened Dutch cocoa. All right, so now I'm going to start with flour and end with flour. So I'm going to add flour to the mix. And then I'm going to, of course, stir at first to get everything incorporated together. Before I increase my speed. Because you don't want to have the flour shoot up out at you when you have the flour bath. Okay? Then I'm going to add a little of my buttermilk. I'm not going to beat it too hard at this step. I just want everything to become incorporated, to be uniform, to get mixed and introduced to each other. So I'm not going to add too much, and I'm not going to add it all at once. All right. So now I add some more of my dry mix. I'll add some more of the buttermilk. And remember, if you don't have buttermilk, you can just simply take a cup of whole milk and you can add 2 tablespoons of white distilled vinegar to it, mix it and let it sit, and it will produce your buttermilk. No need to go and try to purchase it. So now I'm going to add some more of my dry ingredient. And the key here is just to mix it. At this step, you're not trying to beat it. You just want to get everything mixed and incorporated together. I will add the remaining of my buttermilk at this point. So just a stir will be okay. If you just place it on stir, it'll be great. Because a lot of times when your cake separates or it splits or has hollows, not just from air bubbles, it's where the gluten is starting to react. So now I'm going to add the remaining of my dry ingredient. I'll just turn it off. So I'll add the remaining of the flour. So the key is to start with the dry ingredients and to end with the dry ingredients. All right. So I'm going to give it a gentle stir here. And while this is stirring, I'm going to go ahead and preset my oven. I want to bake it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. This is not going to be a cold oven bake. It is going to be already preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So now that I have it stirred, as you can see, it gives you a nice chocolatey appearance. So I'm going to scrape down the sides of the bowl, and also I'm going to fold from the bottom to the top, because again, I want everything to be well incorporated together. I want this to be smooth and creamy. In the blender, it looks like it could be a chocolate cake, but when the buttermilk acidity and the acidity of the cocoa reacts, once you place it in the oven and it heats up, that's when you get your mahogany color. So as I said, this is the originator for what we know today as the red velvet cake. People just start adding the food coloring because they wanted to more intense red. But the mahogany cake walked, as I stated earlier, so that red velvet could run, because nobody really does mahogany anymore. Everybody just focuses on all the velvets. Even myself at times, you know, I bake them in every color, even marble swirls, you name it. But this is the originator. And with this cake, not just the cake being soft, fluffy, and has a very nice taste to it, and even the color, I even like the color. But the icing that goes on this cake is the real reason I wanted to make it. Because a lot of people message me about frosting and icings for cakes. Now, the icing that go on this one is the icing that most people are trying to mimic. And it's not a buttercream. It is an old-fashioned icing. We call it the Ermine, which is really, really good. It's not as sweet as buttercream, and it has the same texture and whipped as the whipped cream, the fluffiness as the whipped cream, but it's not a very sweet icing, which is what I like. I'm not a buttercream fan. I usually take that off. I can tolerate whipped, you know, halfway through the cake or whatever it's on, and I usually take the other part off. But this is the icing that I really like because it's what I grew up on. And again, I'm going to make that, and I'll take you through the steps of that as well. But we're going to place the cake now on what did I put it on 4. And I'm going to beat it for like 2 minutes, no more than 2 minutes, and then we're going to be ready to prep our pans and place it in the oven. So I'll pick you back up when we're ready. Okay, guys. The beating is over. Right, so now I'm going to spray the bottom of my pans as well as the side with the non-stick spray. Make sure you spray them really well. And as I've always told you, I find this at Pam. This is all bake. I find this at Ollie's, but you can also use Pam. And I cut my wax paper so that it will, parchment paper so that it fits in the bottom. And also when you spray it, it helps the wax paper to adhere to the bottom of the pan. It doesn't move. So that when you add your batter, it goes in. Okay. So I'm going to spray this one. I spray the sides and the bottom very well. Okay. With this one, I'm not going to add the sugar to the sides. I never have a problem with these coming out. So I'm just going to put my wax paper in the bottom because I won't be able to put it on the bottom so that the sides and the bottom have the same consistency. So I'm just going to put the wax paper. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is, of course, release what's on my beater back into my mixing bowl. I think I've gotten everything. Okay. Now I'm going to mix this by hand, just gently folding, making sure I don't see any separation. I don't see any strikes, white streaks in it, where it seems like my dry ingredients didn't mix well. I don't see an overabundance of chocolate in one area, which means that the chocolate settled out. So it seems like it's mixed very well. Okay. So I will fold it from the bottom to the top and scrape the sides, just making sure that I'm getting a uniform mix. All right. And so now it's ready to transfer to my baking pans. These are the 8-inch pans. And I'm going to cut mine out into the pans just to make sure that I have equal portions in each pan instead of pouring. I'm just going to scoop it out like cup by cup into each one of my baking pans. And this is just making sure that it is an even distribution in each one. I don't like to see a small cake and a large one, or too much in one. Not enough in the other. I like, when I bite into mine, I want them to be the same. Okay. So that's about a 3/4 cup in that one. And the rest will be, okay, I can put the rest of it in here, and that'll be roughly about the same. So about 2 3/4 cup in each one. These little spatulas come in quite handy. And I will kind of shake it in the pan, make sure everything's evenly distributed. Okay, so I think I have enough. So once this cooks, you'll be able to see that mahogany color, and you'll understand why I keep saying mahogany walks so red velvet could run. Over time, you know, we perfect everything. But this is a very good cake, very moist, fluffy. It has a very nice texture, very nice taste. And like I said, the icing that goes on this one is the real reason that I like to make it. And you can use it on different cakes as well. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do before placing it in the oven is I'm going to, of course, you know, I'm going to make sure that everything is even, and I'm going to tap it to release the air bubbles. Same with this one. This one had a few more air pockets. This one had a few more air pockets. I can see them up on the top. Okay, so now I have everything ready. And so I'm ready now to place my cake in the oven. Okay. I have, my oven is pre-lined. So I will place these both center port of my oven. And you bake these for roughly 30 to 35 minutes. And as I say, on every bake, every oven varies in temperature. So you would have to check your cake to make sure that it was ready. I would say at the 30-minute mark, 25 to 30-minute mark, depending on your oven. I would take a toothpick or a kebab stick or even a fork and stick in to make sure that it came out clean. And then you will know that the bake is complete. All right. So 30 to 35 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm going to place you on a brief pause, and I'm going to get all the things ready for the icing that's going to go on the cake. And as I said earlier, it's an Ermine icing. And I'll get everything pre-measured, and we'll be ready to prepare that. So hang tight. Okay guys, we're halfway through the bake on the cake. It has roughly about 15 more minutes, and the 30-minute mark will be up, and I'll check it. So we're going to go ahead and get started on the frosting for the cake. Frosting, which is another vintage word. This is going to be a frosting that's made using milk and flour, and we're going to cook it down until it's like a pudding. And we're going to cream some butter, and then we're going to allow the pudding mixture to cool, and then we're going to introduce the whipped butter and the flour mixture together, and then we're going to whisk it. We're going to beat it on the beater. Okay, this is an Ermine or Ermine, however you say it, frosting. That's just like tomato, pecan, pecan is however you pronounce it, your enunciation of the words. This again is a frosting. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add the 2 cups of whole milk to our saucepan. 2 cups of whole milk. We're going to add that to the saucepan. And we're going to place the eye on like a low heat. So around 2-3 on your stove, you know, should be comparable. Just a low heat. You don't want the milk to boil. We just want it to be warm. Okay? We're going to add the flour to the milk, and we're going to be stirring the milk as we add the flour. Now you can stir it once it's in the pan, or you can use your whisk to whisk it. I'm going to use my wooden spoon and just stir it. This is going to heat up, and once it heats up, about 2 to 3 minutes, you notice I'm giving specific times on this recipe and no longer. This is going to become like a pudding. So while this is getting ready to heat, because I just turned my eye on actually, on like a low heat. While this is heating up, you see I'm stirring, adding my flour, and getting it introduced well into the milk so nothing is lumpy or clumpy. So while this is getting ready to heat up, I'm going to go ahead and get my butter ready. I'm going to place 2 cups of butter in my blender. Okay, that's 4 sticks. Make sure that the butter is soft, it's at room temperature. Now this is the key step to this frosting, is to make sure that the butter is like between 60 and 70 degrees. You want it to be at basically room temperature is fine. Because if you get it too hot, if you like try to melt it in a pot or leave it in the microwave too long to melt it to get it soft, then it will throw your frosting off. It'll make it more runny than it'll be thick and creamy and fluffy. So make sure the butter is pretty much at room temperature. And again, that's 2 cups, which will be 4 sticks. I use unsalted butter, but if you have salted, that's fine. You just remember that when you're using unsalted butter, you may want to add about a half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of salt to whatever you're cooking. And that's optional, because as you know with me, I usually don't add salt, but that is optional. Just telling you how you do it. If you use salted butter, then you don't want to add salt to it because that'll make it too salty. Okay? FYI. Tip for today. Besides making sure that the milk and flour becomes a pudding, and that the butter is actually softened at room temperature, is not actually hot, because that will definitely mess your frosting up. Okay, so we're going to place the blender on about 2 just to stir it and get all of the sticks of butter kind of broken apart, and make sure that they mix well. So you want to whip the butter. That's what we're going to do, is whip it. And with the milk and the flour, we're just going to stir it or whisk it, whichever you do, just to make sure that it becomes like a pudding is what you want it to look like. And that doesn't take long once the milk starts to heat up. I did want to go ahead and have the milk heated. You know, I wanted you to see that I did add 2 cups of milk. And I do have a handheld blender, which I could use my whisk on that. Okay. And you do have to stir it constantly. And your constant and my constant, if you're not a skilled cook, then I would say stand guard and keep your stir going. And just know it's going to take some elbow, but if you are used to it, you kind of know what it takes. So I'm going to place you guys on a brief pause while this heats up and forms the pudding formation. And I'm going to increase the speed on my blender so that I can whip the butter. And I'll pick you back up when it's time to prep this for the refrigerator and get ready for the next part. Okay, everyone. The cake is ready to be removed from the oven. It took exactly 35 minutes to bake. And a good measure is when you see that it has released from the sides of your baking pans, then you know it's ready. All right? So that's the first one, and it looks kind of a reddish brown, as you can see. And that's the second one, kind of a reddish brown. All right, we're going to place these on a cooling rack and allow these to cool for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to turn them out, but I'm not going to ice them because my icing isn't, my frosting I should say, isn't ready yet. So I'm going to allow these to cool for 10 minutes, and while these are cooling, I'm going to place my milk back on the stove with the flour and allow it to get into the pudding formation. And I did pull out my hand mixer because whisking by hand is a chore. And I'm just going to use my blender, and I'm going to mix it until it gets into the pudding formation. And then I'll be ready to add the next ingredient to my frosting. Okay. So I'll place you on a brief pause, allow these to cool, and I'll continue to prepare the frosting. I'll be right back. Okay, everyone. I think we're there. I'm going to turn the eye off. And this is what you want to do. You want to whip it until it looks like pudding, okay? You don't want to overheat it, overcook it. You just want it you stir it because it'll stick to the bottom. It will burn. So you want to make sure that it looks like pudding, all right? So now whisking is the key, and whisking by hand is a job. I don't think I could do it today. So I pulled out my trusty hand mixer that has a whisk on it. Okay? Alright. So now the next thing is that the butter is whipped, and I actually turned it off. It doesn't take long, about 2 or 3 minutes to whip the butter. We're going to set this aside. Now the next thing you want to do is you would like to add your sugar and your salt if you're adding salt. You need 2 cups of sugar. And if you want to use salt, you need to use 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, okay? So you add that to the pudding mix, and then you're going to whisk it as well. And at this point, what you're doing is you're just whisking it just to get everything well incorporated together. You want your sugar to dissolve. Of course, you know that it's getting heated, so the sugar will dissolve. So you remove it from the heat to do this part. You don't leave it on the stove. that it's all well incorporated together. Again, roughly about 2 minutes is good enough. Okay? So now, the next step is that we're going to take a piece of saran wrap and we're going to place this over it, and you're going to press the saran wrap down into the saucepan until it rests on top of your mixture. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing this so that it doesn't form a skin on the top, okay? Because you know, sometimes when you use sugar or milk and sugar or milk and flour, sometimes it leaves like a film on top. You can kind of like pick it up with a spoon or push it off with your spatula. We don't want that to form, okay? So you just take a piece of saran wrap and we're going to place this on top. And before we do that, I'm going to make sure I scrape down the sides of my pan really well. I almost forgot it. And the bottom. I'm just making sure that everything is mixed, because again, you don't want a film on top. Okay? Alright, I'm going to mix it one last time for probably about 30 seconds. Alright, so you get the picture. So then you're going to take your saran wrap and you're going to place it over the saucepan and you're just going to push it in. And you're going to let it rest directly on top of your pudding mix. Right? You just push it down until it just rests right on top. It fits perfect, like a glove on hand. Alright? So now, what you want to do is we're going to take this and we're going to place it in the refrigerator, and you're going to place it in the refrigerator for exactly 30 minutes to allow it to cool. So I have my first half prepped, all right? Again, when you do your milk and your flour, that's 2 cups of milk, 2/3 cup of flour. You're going to mix it very well. Turn your stove on medium heat. Depending on your stove, you may have to increase the temperature just a little. If you want to place it in a different pan and put water in the bottom of a pan and make like a double boil out of it to do it, you can, just to make sure it doesn't stick. I didn't have to do that, but you place it on a medium heat, and if you have to increase the heat, do so, but make sure that you keep that whisk going the whole time so it doesn't stick to the bottom, settle out, or scorch the bottom of it, okay? So you whisk it, and it took me longer than 2 minutes to get that because I was doing it on like a low to medium heat. I bumped it up to a medium to high heat, so I actually put it on 6 and mixed it, and then when it started, it seemed like it started to make the pudding, I turned my heat down to 4 to finish it, okay? So that's the first part. Then I added the sugar, and again, if you want to add salt, you add salt. That's going to be 2 cups of white granulated sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt, if you so desire, kosher salt, and then you're going to whisk it as well. Then you're ready to place the saran wrap on it, place it in your refrigerator, allow it to cool for exactly 30 minutes, okay? Then once we take it from the refrigerator, we're going to incorporate the flour, milk, sugar, optional salt if you use salt. We're going to incorporate that by what we call dollops or heaping teaspoons or heaping tablespoons. As my grandmother would say, you just scoop up a heap of it and put it in, and we're going to allow it to become incorporated with our whipped butter, all right? And then once we do that part, we're going to cream it out for like 2 minutes, and then we're going to add our vanilla extract, which I need to make sure I move this over here, and that's going to be 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract to it, and we're going to Scrape the sides of the bowl well and make sure it folds the bottom over. Make sure everything becomes incorporated together. And then we're ready to switch over to our whisk. And then we're going to whisk it. And this is when we're going to get that light and fluffy texture of it. The consistency of like stiff whipped cream. That's what it's going to give us the frosting that we actually want to be able to place on our cake. Right? So I'm going to place you on a brief pause while my 30-minute mark for the cooling on my milk, sugar, flour, and if you use salt mixture, pudding actually cools down. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to do a little housekeeping. You know, we mess up to clean up. Okay? So I'll place you on a pause and I'll be right back with you. Okay, everyone. The cakes are cool. I've transferred them to the cake plate. This is the first layer. As you can see, it is the same height. There's not a side that's higher than the other. And then I have the second layer on a piece of parchment paper. And as you can see, it's the same size as well. All right? They came out excellent. So I'm going to leave them laying here and allow them to continue to cool because the frosting is still in the refrigerator. I checked it. It's not cool enough yet. And then I'll take it out. I'll pick you back up and we'll go through the final prep for the frosting. Okay? So these should be good and cool. Now I'll give you a couple of tips here. If you don't measure and you just pour your batter into the pans and eyeball visually say that they're the same level, and then one bakes higher than the other one, you can simply take your knife and slice the top of that cake off just to make sure that it sits flat along with the other one. That's one tip. And now icing it or frosting it or whatever you say, this is frosting I'm using today. I say we're vintage today. So with that, make sure the cake is really, really cool. You can place the cake in the refrigerator to cool, or you can take some of the crumbs off the cake, just cut your little slice off the top, off the very tip of it, crumble it up, and you can add icing, just a very thin glaze of your frosting or icing to your cakes, put the little crumbs on it, you know, spread it to make sure they mix in, then place it in the refrigerator and let it cool, then pull it out and add the remaining frosting to it. And that's the key to your frosting actually adhering and clinging to the cake and giving you that smooth and fluffy, velvety appearance. Okay? Instead of putting it and it's falling off and you're constantly trying to get it to stay on and it kind of rolls off and does its own thing. That's a tip to get your frosting or your icing to actually adhere to the surface of your cake so that it gives you that nice fluffy, creamy, fluffy, velvety texture and also appearance. And you can go back and make little dollops in the frosting to make little designs and kind of smooth on the top, you know, make little designs in it. Okay, that's how you get it to actually cling and give a nice clean appearance. Okay, sometimes I don't worry about that, especially if it's for here. I just put it on because we're going to eat it. But if you're serving it, you know, in a public place, taking it to your job for luncheon or, you know, some get together, that's a tip to get your any cake that you bake, to get your icing very evenly distributed and give a very nice texture, clean adherence to your cake. Okay, so I'll place you on another pause while we wait on our mixture to actually continue to cool, and I'll pick you back up when it's time to pull out and finish it with our blender. Be right back with you. Okay, everyone, I have removed the cooled mixture from the refrigerator. It is good and cold, and I can take off the saran wrap, and there is no skin on top. Okay, there's no skin. So now I'm going to add, as my grandmother would say, a heaping spoon of this to the blender, and I want it to be on low. Okay. pushing it in. So I have everything, it's just a little up in here. I'll just open this up. Okay. So I'm going to mix this on low. This is this the whipped butter and the cool flour, milk, and sugar mixture. Just put it on a stir will be just fine. So now I'm going to scrape down the sides of my mixing bowl and fold everything over. Now give it a good mix with my wooden spoon here. All right. Then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of my Watkins baking vanilla. About time to pull out a new bottle. I'm going to increase the speed just slightly just to beat that in. Now, the last thing I want to do is, well, next to the last thing, I want to scrape everything off of my blender here and make sure that it falls back into the mixing bowl, because the last step is that I'm going to change out the attachments. I'm going to take this off because this is for beating, and I'm going to place on the whisk attachment, and then I'm going to whisk the frosting until it's whipped. Light and fluffy. And ready to go on the cake. Right. I think that's enough. Right. I'm going to take this attachment off. I'm going to add the whisk. And I'm going to whisk it on a medium speed, and I'm just simply going to whip it until it is frosted. It's not going to take long. It's going to look like stiff whipped cream is what it's going to look like. So I'll place you on a brief pause while this whips. Okay, everyone, the icing is, frosting is ready. And now this is the frosting that when you were a kid, you always couldn't wait until your mom or your grandmom was finished with it so you could lick the beater. This is that icing, or frosting, whichever you want to call it. I've already tried spreading it. It spreads well. As you can see, it is very thick, which is what you want, thick, creamy, and smooth. And you can put as much as you would like or as less as you would like. And I will say that this is a lot of frosting, and you can store it for up to a week and use it. I am going to use it for another bake, because I'm sure once this is sampled, somebody's gonna want another one. Or you can use it for any cake. You don't have to specifically use it for this one. You can use this frosting on any cake. For those of you who are like me, you don't like buttercream, and you don't like your icings to be very sweet, or your frostings to be very sweet, this is the perfect one. I've thought about this for a while. It just takes longer to make the frosting than it does to make the cake. That's the only, I guess, disadvantage to you not wanting to do it. But you could actually make with the amount of frosting that this made, you could actually make 4 layers and make it a 4 layer. But I didn't want to do a 4 layer. That's too much cake for just 1 or 2 people. But you do make enough to where you can make 4 and just layer them. I'm just doing a 2 layer. But this is, as they say, this is that frosting. This is the frosting that's the bomb.com. Yeah, it just takes a long time to make it. That's why I made more. Because if I bake a different layer cake, I can use this frosting. And like I said, for those out there who are like me, you don't like buttercream, you can tolerate the whipped only so much, and you want your frosting, but you don't want it to be sweet. You want it to be just at the peak of perfection, and this is that frosting. So if you're like me, you've been thinking and reminiscing, and you're like, wow, you wishing they were here to make it. But thank God that I've reached out and they gave me the recipe, and I'm able to now make it myself in memory of them and just keep it going. But if you like me, someone did message me about a frosting. I posted several, and that's very simple. But I think they're like me. They were probably looking for something a little different. This is it. This is the frosting you can use on any cake. It's not, like I said, it's not sweet. It's very, very smooth, very creamy. And it goes on very well as long as you follow instructions. And the key to this frosting is to make sure that the butter is definitely at room temperature and not above room temperature. If your butter melts, if you try to melt it in the microwave, let it cool before you incorporate it into the ingredients. If you melt it on top of the stove, make sure you let it cool down before you incorporate it into the mixture for your whipping it for the icing or for the frosting, because that is what's going to determine whether it's going to come out fluffy like mine, or if it's going to come out loose and running and won't adhere to your cake. As you can see, this is the first layer, and as you can see, the frosting goes on very well. Now I will take the second layer off of the wax paper, and I will place it on top. And as you see, it doesn't slide, and as you can see, it is level. One side's not higher than the other. Okay. So then I'll just take a couple of dollops, huge heapings, or heapings, as my grandmother would say, and just spread it out over the cake. And I did let the cake, like I said, it takes longer to prepare the frosting than the cake. And so I did leave the cake to actually cool real well, so I don't have any cake crumbs like in my icing or in my frosting. It's nice and white, which is what I like. But those crumbs are good. They're part of the cake. If they were in it, I'd still eat it because they're just as good. But we're all about appearance, so, well, some people are. Because, I'll get all kind of comments, in which everybody knows by now not to leave a negative comment on my page, because I just stroll right past you. I'm all about positivity. Because those crumbs, they eat just like the cake, whether they're in the icing or not mixed in the icing. They're just as good as the cake because they're a part of the cake. Now this cake is an older cake, And I will say that when I say chemistry is baking is a chemistry, it's a science. That is true, because this is a cake that strictly depends on the acidity of the cocoa, and make sure it's unsweetened cocoa, and also the acidity of the buttermilk. This is not one that you can do substitutions on, as far as getting the unique color that gives it its name. It gives you that reddish brown color, which we call mahogany, which is the name of the cake. So as I said earlier, this is the quintessential cake in which the red velvets came from. All the velvets, you know, the red velvet came from this, and then all the other velvets, people just start changing out the colors. But I do a little more than just change out the colors, because I look at the density of the ingredients that's in the cake. I actually put the science to work. And so every time I do a velvet cake, I don't use the same recipe, because I look at the color, the flavoring, the texture that I'm going for. Yeah. But you guys know that. You watch enough of my videos to know that I switch it up. And I give tips and explain why. Alright. So this is the mahogany cake. I know you guys can't wait till I cut it. I'm getting ready to. I'm just going to spread just a little more icing, because this is my favorite icing. Frosting. I keep saying icing, but it's frosting. But whichever. Whatever you call it. It's all one and the same. Just thought I'd do something a little different today. And like I said, you can take your little cake decorators, and I do have some in the drawer, but I'm not into it today. You can take your little spreaders if you want it to be smoother. You can just take these and go around the cake if you want it to be like really, really smooth. But this is for home, and I'm not really going to go through all those troubles, because we're going to eat it, whether it's, as they say, picture perfect or not. And it's picture perfect to me. Okay. So I want a little more on top, because I want to be. You can tell I like this frosting. As I said, it's one of my favorites. So I just put a little bit more on top, and this is going to be it. I know I said that, what, 5 minutes ago? But for real this time. Okay. There we go. Right. So we have the epitome of all cakes, the originator of all velvet cakes. We have the mahogany cake. Beautiful. Okay. So now I'm going to slice the cake so you can see what the inside looks like. Because I've already told you that this was for me. Of course, I think you know from the beginning this was for me, because I told you this is one of my favorite frostings to actually make. It just takes longer to make it than to make the cake itself. Okay. Let's get a knife. And let's get a fork. Okay, drum roll, please. and I do have a cake knife. As you can see, mahogany color. Okay. As you can see, it gives you that reddish brown tint, the mahogany color, hence the name. Okay, now I will tell you how delicious it is. Very light, very fluffy. The texture is on point. The Ermine frosting, which I've told you this is my favorite, and I may be a little biased on this, but this is my favorite frosting. It is delectable. Not too much frosting, just right. If you were here, I'd share a piece with you. Okay. And it's actually better than the velvet cakes to me, my personal preference. Now I do like the purple velvet and the blue velvet, and it's only that way because of the food coloring that you use. They're modifications of this original cake, and it's less of the cocoa, which in here the 3 tablespoons of cocoa, it just gels with it. But to me, it tastes better than the velvets. But I do like the velvets. All right, so here we go. I'll let you see the inside of the cake. See the reddish brown? Let's turn the light on here. You see like the reddish brown? Okay. That is the mahogany cake. Alright guys, that completes the epic bake for today. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing me to enter into your space and to share my space and to bake this mahogany cake for you my way. I greatly appreciate you if you are a subscriber. I thank you so very much. If you just strolled by and just stopped in to visit, I thank you for stopping. I hope that you will also decide that you want to be a subscriber. If you would, please, subscribers and non-subscribers, click the thumbs up. That is just to push out the videos into the YouTube algorithm so that everyone sees what you see. And it just says that it's a video that's worth watching. Also, leave a comment below. Make sure it's a positive comment, because if it's negative, I do not tolerate it. I pass right by it to the next positive. I don't listen to anything negative. In this world today, we need all the positivity that we can accumulate. And sometimes things start with us. If you're the only person that somebody encounters that day, be nice to them. We don't know what people are going through, okay? I'm always trying to be nice. I'm always positive. I always think positive. I share positive vibes. I stay motivated and focused. I inspire people. I try to encourage people just like I encourage you to do the same. So they're just not words that I say on YouTube. I actually live this every day. I encounter a lot of students, and I pass this on to my students, whether it's via announcements on a Canvas platform for the class, or if they're in my office, I share this with them. If I pass them on the hallway, I share it with them. If I'm going from building to building as I pass them, I always have positive vibes, positive words of encouragement to pass on, hoping that it rubs off and that it makes someone's day, because it makes my day just to share it. All right, so it takes just as much energy to be positive as it does to be negative, and I choose to be positive, and I ask that you do the same. So thanks again for joining me on this epic bake of a vintage mahogany cake. Please like, subscribe, comment, and click the notification bell so that as soon as I post a new video, you'll be the first one to see it. Have an awesome rest of your Sunday, and I hope that you're off to a wonderful start for this new week. Thanks again, and be blessed.